Hey there, everybody. Thanks for being here with me today. I'm Dana, and this is the Revolution Within podcast. Here's where you're learning how to revolutionize your relationship with yourself. Now, this is a lamp, so it may look like there's something growing out of my head, but it's not. There's not. It's just a lamp. And how are we doing that? We are getting unstuck. We are practicing self-kindness, unlearning people-pleasing, and discovering what we want to do for ourselves rather than what other people want us to do for them. So let me tell you how you can find more information about working with me and how to get on the wait list for upcoming courses and all of the things. My website is revolution-within.com. I'm on Instagram at revolution_within31, and you can email me at dana@revolution-within.com. It's DANA, one N. One D, one A, one N, one A. If you're new to the podcast, let me welcome you. Welcome. My name is Dana Walker Inskeep. I'm a life coach who specializes in mindset work by teaching people how to be profoundly kind to themselves, because from there, all sorts of profound changes happen. I'm also an editor, I'm a songwriter, I'm also a soon-to-be author. I'm self-publishing a book pretty soon. So I'm going to be releasing chapters on my Substack. So if you want a sneak peek of the book, you'll want to follow me on Substack, and that account is Revolution Within 31. All one word, Revolution Within 31, no spaces. I'm here to guide people toward healing, to have better relationships with themselves through mindset shifts, journaling, meditation, which then flows out into their relationships with everyone else. When you practice self-kindness, the ripple effect begins where you become super aware of how you've been allowing other people to take advantage of your time and your energy, and you start reevaluating who and what you want to invest your bandwidth in. It becomes who's worth my time rather than who can I help in order to earn the title of good person today. No, it's not selfish. That's true self-kindness. That's what self-care really looks like. Although bubble baths, massages, facials, etc., the treat yourself mentality is lovely. It's much needed in the self-care milieu. Actual self-care is knowing your own value and prioritizing your needs and leaving room for your wants and desires in there too, above all others. Now, obviously, that's not always fully possible when you're a caretaker for children, elderly, infirm people, but in those instances, it's actually even more crucial to locate your inner self-care fairy and wave her wand around the place, because if you neglect your needs for long enough, you end up collapsing and not being able to take care of anyone, and your relationships suffer greatly. Yeah, I had to move that lamp because it was distracting the heck out of me. So today I'm going to talk about the secret to happiness, which if you've ever heard me talk about it before, you'll know that it really isn't much of a secret, because it's rooted in mindful, intentional practices of self-kindness, and happiness is a feeling. It's not a destination. It's not a state of constant state of being. Feelings change. They fluctuate. They're not meant to remain static. That's part of being human. So thinking of the secret to happiness as this magical 3-step process and bling, you can follow this and then you'll feel happy forever, not a thing. What I'm talking about is finding that overall sense of satisfaction with the life you're living. We can all have days when we're sad, mad, frustrated, and don't really have a definitive answer as to why, but those feelings don't actually have to be your default setting. You can practice things that bring you to a happier, more content state more often. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not dismissing things like depression or grief. Believe me, I, of all people, can relate to both. I won't launch into my entire history in every episode because who cares? But I have a long history of depression. I experienced severe postpartum depression after the birth of my children, and my mom died 9 years ago. So I've experienced loss and depression. And along with losing other close friends and family members in one way, shape, or form, and having my heart broken more times than I care to recall, I'm familiar with the spiral. I know that feelings can be overwhelming and downright oppressive sometimes. Just know that everyone wants to escape bad feelings. Sometimes it's not just you. But this secret that I'm talking about, it's been studied by actual scientists for over 80 years. Isn't that cool? Because it's kind of always been a thing. I mean, let's face it, we all want to be happy, right? I mean, go out and ask anyone on the street that question, what do you want more than anything? The answer will almost always be, I want to be happy, or I want to be filthy rich, but we'll get to that later. So, all right, let me back up and start from the beginning. There's a study that's been conducted by Harvard University since 1938, and it's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. The study started out with 268 Harvard sophomores in the Great Depression and included our 35th president, John F. Kennedy, and is still following the remaining living participants and the descendants of the original ones to this day. The idea behind the study was to figure out how one's early years affect the trajectory of their lives, how well or how poorly they age, things like that. Genetics and environment are also taken into account, but considering the original control group were all white male students from the most prestigious Ivy League school in America at the time, I'd say they were dealt a pretty advantageous hand from the get-go. Just my opinion. The control group actually was expanded beyond Harvard students to a group of 456 Bostonians residing in the inner city areas in the 1970s. But I'm not going to delve into those specifics as that's not my point. My point here is that the overwhelming evidence of this study, even including the inner city participants, and this is the longest and most comprehensive study of its kind, is that maintaining healthy, nurturing relationships have just as much, if not more, effect on our overall health than the usual suspects like diet, exercise, or financial security. Relationships, not eating kale or running 20 miles a week like it's your religion, not wealth, not status or fame. Relationships, loving family, partnerships, friendships, and community. Interesting, right? But wait, there's more. In 1998, Dr. Martin Seligman became the president of the American Psychological Association. He'd grown weary of the psychology field having a fixation on the negative aspects of human behavior, the study of mental illnesses, and in general, just being a colossal bummer. So old Marty turned that frown upside down by making it his mission to shift toward studying the uplifting effects of being human, aspects of being human, thus popularizing what is known as positive psychology. Now, by the early 2000s, interest in the science of mental and emotional well-being began to pick up steam, while simultaneously, this new discovery called the internet inadvertently began languidly creeping us towards social, societal isolation, right? That didn't seem to bode well for developing strong relationship bonds, did it? Then, a global pandemic, whoops! And here we are, 5 years later. So what's the latest research telling us? Well, it's still showing us that people who socially isolate themselves, people who work really long hours and never take vacations, and people who surround themselves with a lot of negative influences actually feel miserable most of the time, even if they make a crap ton of money. Who knew? Well, like I said, scientists. So why is that? Here's why. Things like not actively interacting with people, not having a good work-life balance, and hyper-focusing on just making money at all costs alters our brain's levels of dopamine and serotonin, which are crucial for mood regulation. They're like our pleasure receptors. And this in turn affects our stress response and can lead to depression. So last summer, I took this rad class called The Science of Wellbeing, taught by Yale professor Dr. Laurie Santos. Now, I don't go to Yale. I took it online through Coursera.com. Dr. Santos' class is really enlightening, though, because it shows how the correlation to the accumulation of wealth is directly proportional to the decrease in satisfaction in our lives. Side note, Dr. Santos offers this course for free. She's an excellent teacher and the class is really fun and interesting. I think it should be required for everyone with a pulse, but that's just my opinion. She's also been on my Future Bestie Mel Robbins podcast. I'm not sure what episode that is, but it's pretty recent, and this is being recorded in February 16th of 2025. So if you want to catch her on Mel's podcast, you can look for that. Anyway, moving on. The emphasis on stuff, like acquiring fancy cars, bigger homes, yachts, all that kind of stuff, ends up being meaningless to actually feeling happy beyond a certain point. Once our basic needs are met and we no longer live in like this constant stress of like having money concerns, the accumulation of wealth can actually be a slippery slope. Well, so what do I mean by that? Okay, so there's a study that was done in 2010 that had like the basic needs, no money worries number at making $75,000 a year. But I think we can all agree how ridiculous that is in today's economy. I mean, it depends on where you live in the world, of course, but let's guess that levels off for some of us at around $150,000 to $300,000 a year, depending on where you live. I live in Southern California, so my guess it's going to be closer to, you know, the higher range. And, but Dr. Santos' course taught me that at some point, the desire for wanting more can take over and possibly become obsessive. So enjoying that wealth isn't a priority or even really a possibility, because the brain chemistry changes and the focus becomes more. It just becomes more. Isn't that sad? It actually made me understand the possible mindset. And I say possible since I don't know them all personally, so who can be certain, of one of the like non-charitable, seemingly ruthless and greedy billionaires a bit more clearly, and maybe have compassion, not compassion per se, but like clarity, that having that much money can make a person wildly powerful, yes, but can you imagine having all of that and never feeling a bit of like real satisfaction, happiness, or contentment? It just makes me feel sad, you know? What the evidence overwhelmingly shows is this: experiences are where those like hits of happiness are found. Traveling, spending time with and creating memories with the people that you love, far more valuable than any material item is over the long haul. Basically, your stuff can't love you back. Let's also consider how you feel physically in your body and how well you manage your mind, your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are the roots from which all these things grow. So your physical and mental wellness are the greatest determinants of your feelings of happiness and contentment within yourself. And these depend solely on your relationship with yourself. That relationship, that's the crucial one right there. Of all these relationships, the key one is the one that you have with you. I mean, think about it logically for a moment. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not nurturing your relationship with yourself, how will you be able to have those healthy, thriving relationships with others that will basically not guarantee, but make it, you know, make your odds of having a longer, happier life overall higher? Okay, so what's the shortcut to getting to that happy place? There is no shortcut, of course. But like I've said before, there are things that we can put into practice that can help elevate our moods and give little hits to the pleasure centers, dopamine levels, without screens, without overeating, without overspending, without overdrinking, etc. Since we live in a society that is so ever focused on buying stuff to make us happy, and then 10 minutes later, when that gets old, buying more stuff, what can we do instead? Because I know that there are times when you're just having a bad day and you're feeling a little bummed out and you're not looking into diving deep into some soulful quest to find the meaning of life. When you'd simply like to find something that would just lift your spirits or make you smile, here are a few suggestions. First suggestion, glimmers. Glimmers are moments when you immerse yourself in the present moment. It's a term coined by Deb Dana. find beauty in the ordinary things. Example, when you're sitting with your morning cup of coffee, take time to really savor it. Inhale the aroma, sip it, let the flavor linger on your tongue. Really enjoy it. Listening, immersing yourself in your favorite music. You can just anything that engages your senses and keeps you kind of firm in the moment. It makes you enjoy the present rather than having your brain focused on the past or the future, which we tend to do a lot. I'm a big fan of like looking out at the sky from the balcony of my tree house here. This little office has my husband's great carpenter, and he built this little tree house for the boys. And I have a balcony, and I often go out and just look at the colors of the sky as the sun sets, because it's just one of my favorite glimmers. It's just an example. Okay, number 2, gratitude. I'd say if there's anything about the so-called ordinary life that's appealing, it's just simply leaning into gratitude of the things, of the relationships with the people that you do love the most. Like holding my boys in my arms when they were little and just inhaling their, putting my face in their hair and just like breathe. There's nothing more precious to me than that. And I still, even though they're taller than I am now, I still, like when they're sitting down, I'll still like lean in and just like, put my face on the top of their head, because it just makes me grateful for them. Maybe that's weird. I don't know, but it's my thing and I love it and they tolerate it. So onward. Maybe you like cuddling with your pet or cuddling with your partner, or, just something that, and leaning into that feeling of being, and then being really, really grateful for that, just that moment, that lean into the feeling of gratitude. Tie it in with glimmers, lean into the feeling of gratitude for that moment is something that can, really make you feel better. And then the third thing that I'm going to talk about is called grounding. This might be a little woo-woo granola for some of you, but it works because energy exchange is a real thing. I mean, how do you think Wi-Fi connections happen? There is energy flying about all over the place here, okay? So grounding is a technique that's really effective when you're having like a panic attack, and it also works well when you're feeling out of sorts. So you stand up and it's basically grounding yourself to the earth. You stand up, you relax your arms by your sides, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then press your feet into the ground. You take a few more. You breathe while you exhale, and you visualize roots kind of growing from your feet into the earth. Take a few more deep breaths, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth, while you visualize your energy connecting with the loving energy of the earth. Like I said, it's an energy exchange, and it can help calm down anxiety, and it can help you feel a connection with what's around us, like nature. Like even if you're in your house, you don't have to be outside to do this. But grounding is a technique that can just take your spinning mind and just center it. All right, so let's tie this all together, shall we? Listen, I'm aware that financial survival is a day-to-day struggle for a lot of people, so I'm not dismissing the importance of earning a living or supporting our families and ourselves. But when you get to the end of your life, and none of us know when that day is, do you want to look back and only see struggle? Or do you want to see the life you lived and the joyful faces and bittersweet memories that you created with the people that you lived it with? When you decide to prioritize and practice self-kindness over everything else, you're improving that primary relationship, the one that every other relationship grows from, and giving yourself the incredible gift of more happiness. When you root yourself in a self-kindness practice, you're strengthening all of your other relationships, because when you are good to yourself, when you trust yourself, when you feel safe with yourself, And when you learn how to be kind to yourself, that's when you really learn how to be safe to yourself, safe with yourself. You know that you've got your own back. And your mind, you may find that your mind's racing all the time, or that you're always finding yourself looking outside of yourself for validation, or always doing things for other people and not yourself, because you've been focusing outside yourself for so long that you don't even know where to start. That grounding technique is a good place to start, to just connect yourself to the earth and breathe and connect and get your mind to kind of stop racing all the time. That's self-kindness. That's self-care right there. And when you do that, when you improve your relationship with yourself, it improves everything else. It improves all of your other relationships. You'll be a better partner. You'll be a better parent. You'll be a better employee. You'll be a better boss. Be a better daughter, son, all the way down the board. Anyway, that's my latest contribution to this podcast, Stratosphere, my beautiful dreamers. If you have any comments or questions, there's an option in the show description for the podcast, on the podcast feed, to text me with your thoughts. So please feel free. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment below, but play nicely. The universe is always paying attention, and trolling isn't rewarded the way that you think it might be. Also, it really helps the show to leave a good review, and I hope you like it enough to leave a 5-star one. Share it with your friends. Thanks, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care, and remember, all will be well.